Yes. So good day, all. I am part of the Global Ocean Accounts Partnership, Africa Community of Practice, which is led by Professor Ken Findley, CPUT Research Chair Ocean Economy. And it is a pleasure to be here with you today and talk about this exciting framework that can help us to go beyond economic metrics alone to guide ocean decision-making processes, taking into account nature and people as well. But why do we need a holistic framework to support ocean decision-making? Well, the ocean provides a variety of benefits, goods, and services. Marine and coastal ecosystems support economic activities, they support jobs, they support food, transportation, fuel, energy, and the list can grow. That's why numerous nations are using the ocean space to foster development, security, but that also results in growing pressures on the ocean and its assets. The relationship between humans and the ocean is primarily based on the utilities that people derive from it. And these utilities are used to define ocean value. And these values underpin decision-making processes, as those are usually dependent on trade-offs. Sorry. But we cannot forget that the concept of value can be very broad. While one of its definitions is the monetary worth of something, the concept also includes the relative worth, utility, or importance in a broader manner. And the benefits provided by the ocean arise through market, but also non-market ecosystem services and opportunities. So before I mention the economic activities supported by marine and coastal ecosystems, but the ocean is related to our well-being in so many other ways. I mean, it strongly influences the Earth's climate and ecology, and I'm sure you all know that. And it also plays an essential role in our culture, religion, well-being. So we get such a broad range of benefits from the ocean. And those will result in the value that people attribute to marine and coastal ecosystems. But the value of the ocean have traditionally been estimated as its market contribution to GDP. Of course, it is important to measure the value of ocean economies, and economic measurements are the most easily understood ways of expressing something's value. Also, identifying changes in economic activities is critical to support decisions about investments, spending, and macroeconomic management. However, can economic metrics alone represent the religious and cultural benefits I just mentioned? I'm not so sure. Additionally, monetarized metrics alone, they fail in accounting for natural capital assets, sustainability aspects, including the measurement of sectoral impacts, and inclusivity aspects as well. So that's why various efforts, such as the Moving Beyond GDP movement, have been trying to include environmental and social aspects on ocean valuation, not only economic metrics. On top of all that, the ocean importance to people and the need to capture such importance in a broader way, we need to remember that the ocean is changing. The way we monitor, measure, and research the ocean is changing due to tech advancements like remote sensing, automated recordings, robotics, big data, etc. These same tech advancements are also changing how ocean resources are explored, how they are used, and that's opening access for ocean economy expansion. Additionally, oceans themselves are changing due to both natural and anthropogenic factors. And we also need to account for these changes in ocean accounting governance processes. So, when aiming at ocean sustainable development and management, it is critical to prioritize adaptive, evidence-based ocean governance. Adaptative because with all the changes I mentioned, we need to be constantly reevaluating measures, strategies, and policies to be sure that they are aligned to priorities and up to date. And of course, that requires periodic monitoring. I also mentioned not only adaptative, but also evidence-based ocean governance. Well, evidence-based, because as you know, ocean governance needs to coordinate various activities, users, interests, amongst which some can be conflictual. So to ensure good, transparent, and integrated and just governance, it must be underpinned by holistic information that captures not only the monetary aspects we were talking before, but also the social and environmental aspects. And that's how we'll be able to explore opportunities today, improve the fair share of these opportunities, while also securing future opportunities and benefits. Sorry. So for that, various management tools and frameworks have been developed. Many of them are complementary, by the way. For example, MSP, Marine Spatial Planning, MPA, Marine Protected Areas, EBM, Ecosystem-Based Management, the DEPSA-1 framework, which is a framework for ocean management, or ICZM, which is integrated coastal zone management, and even other frameworks and approaches. But to support the implementation of these approaches I just mentioned, as well as the periodic monitoring and reassessment that supports and underpins the adaptive process I mentioned before, it is critical to have an information infrastructure that accommodate all this multidisciplinary information needed, and to follow coherent guidelines that will support the integration of this broad range of data into holistic indicators. And here, ocean accounting framework arises as a critical tool. But before I talk more about ocean accounting, perhaps it's nice to discuss what is an accounting. What does accounting means? Well, accounting is measuring or recording elements, which can also be called stocks. And these stocks, they can change over time as a result of flows. So the ocean accounting framework provides a common information infrastructure to organize and integrate environmental, social, and economic ocean data as measurements and records that can be monetary, yes, but they can also be physical and even qualitative. So you can record the economic contribution of aquaculture sector to the GDP, yes, but you can also record the tons of tuna in a wild fish stock, or the extent of a mangrove forest in hectares and how it changes over time, or the condition of a coral reef as good or vulnerable. And those are just some examples. Through the ocean accounting framework, this multidisciplinary data can be compiled, compared, and integrated into the holistic indicators I mentioned. And those indicators are critical to support informed decision-making and support monitoring and reporting processes and progress toward particular goals or international multilateral agreements and commitments like SDGs, for example. At the same time, by applying the framework, data gaps are also identified, and that can support strategic research and monitoring programs needed. And if you are thinking, what is the link between ocean accounting and the other ocean governance approaches I mentioned before? Well, they're all dependent on information. And this information can be collected, compiled, and harmonized and integrated in a standard way, enabling comparison over time and space to the ocean accounting framework. Now, my apologies. Now you might be thinking, but how to implement ocean accounts? How do we link such a wide variety of information? Well, All that can be found in the detailed technical guidance on ocean accounting. It is provided in the Global Ocean Accounts Partnership, GOAPS website, and I will share the link with you later on after the presentation. But I also want to take the chance and talk a little bit about it. This conceptual framework you can see on the screen now is the framework you are going to find at the GOAP technical guidance. Here in this framework, in this conceptual framework, it's focused on table groups. The table groups it encompasses that are represented by the gray shapes, and the flows are represented by the arrows. So you have different accounting tables where you are going to compile information about ocean economy, including stocks of financial and non-financial assets, or supply and use tables of goods and services. We also have the governance table group with characteristics and consequences of decision-making processes. We have the environmental assets table group that will record the stocks of natural capital. We have tables related to the flows to the environment, recording the supply and use of residuals such as waste or emissions, and the table group that records the flows to the economy with the supply and use of ecosystem services. And even in this representation, you can already see the environmental, economic, and social elements represented here. But there is another way of representing the ocean accounting framework, and it is through the system and flows model for ocean accounting developed by the Africa Community of Practice, which represents the ocean accounting framework as a framework of systems. It evidences the ocean accounting framework as a large, complex system that is formed by a combination of individual components. And these components are connected by flows between them, which are represented by the arrows here. One of the main benefits of this model is that we can easily understand that it can be built on accounting systems that are perhaps already implemented in some countries. For example, most countries already have some kind of national accounts. Additionally, this model also shows that it's not necessary to compile all the components of the ocean accounting framework at once. As a modular framework of individual systems, it is possible to select which components are more relevant to address a specific governance gap or a specific policy priority. And with time, it can be expanded to other components. The important thing is to implement the relevant accounts following the framework guidelines so that further components can be added and integrated with time. So the boxes represent the individual accounting systems I was talking about, of which some are already established and follow international statistical standards, and others are novel and are being tested and adapted. So let's see one by one. In the center here, we have the economic accounts, which are guided by the System of National Accounts, known as SNA. The SNA provides economic metrics using a sectoral approach. And within the economic accounts, we have the ocean economy satellite accounts, which focus on particularly on the economic contribution of ocean sectors. The SNA and the ocean economy satellite accounts can also be disaggregated by particular social groups and inform the distribution of income, employment, or expenditures by demographic groups. And this is part of the social accounts component. But this component is still being explored, and other ways to capture the wider importance of the ocean to society and who benefits from it. Those things are still being expanded and tested and improved. So this is a component under expansion. The next established system is the System of Environmental Economic Accounting Central Framework, famous as CFEF. The CFEF identifies and measures environmental assets and their flows to economy in both monetary and physical ways. So here we already have a step forward, because we are not only measure things in a monetary way, we already started to monitor and to measure things in a physical way. But here, like the system of national accounts, the SNA, we also have a sector approach. The CSCF also captures the impact flows from sectors to the environment, as well as they spend on ocean management and governance. That's why governance accounts are also highlighted here. But as for social accounts, we are also further expanding the governance accounts. Another important component within the ocean accounting framework is the natural capital accounting, which measures natural biotic and abiotic assets and services, indicating their link to economy, ecology, and environment. Very important is that here we move from the sector approach we saw on SNA and CSCF to a spatial-based approach. So the biotic component within the natural capital accounting is captured by the SEA, the System of Environmental Economic Accounting, Ecosystem Accounting, which was really recently accepted. The CEA includes assessment of ecosystems extent, condition, and the identification of ecosystem services and to whom. Finally, we have the risk accounts, which is a novel system of accounting being explored by the Africa Community of Practice, and it aims at estimating the potential negative outcomes of anthropogenic activities, governance measures, social circumstances, and natural disasters in physical, monetary, and qualitative ways, using both spatial and sectoral approaches. Now, let's see some examples of how we can connect these systems by the flows I mentioned before. So let's start by the natural capital, for example. We can identify and measure flows of natural capital from ecosystems as ecosystem services to the economy through the CSCF. And these flows will also affect employment opportunities, welfare, and other social components. But there will also be a flow of anthropogenic pressures from economic production or consumption activities to the environment and the risk associated to these pressures. And these pressures, depending on the risk, they may affect ecosystems function, structure, and such changes on ecosystems may affect the provision of ecosystem services that in turn might affect natural capital supply and use within the economic value chain and influence associated employment opportunities and income. So you can see the feedback effect. We also have the flow of non-market and non-use benefits, such as non-market leisure or the existence of species and systems. Oh, I'm sorry. Species and systems that are valued despite not having any direct or tangible utility. For example, populations of coelacanth that have no final ecosystem or abiotic service values. We can go for a second example, starting by governance accounts now. So policy or regulation instruments influence natural capital and ecosystems. And for example, the definition of marine protected areas and the zonation regulating its uses and non-use areas. That regulations will also modulate anthropogenic risk and influence the use of ocean goods, which will affect how much ocean resources can be used, as well as regulate the residuals. And that will modulate the flows of ocean goods and services to the economy. Governance will also influence how ocean sectors can use the environment and who will benefit from this. So you can see through these examples how those systems are connected and affect each other.
Yes.
Is there any question? Should I continue? I'll take it as a go for it. I will continue. So that's how the different systems of accounting can be connected, and how they can track changes on different aspects, and how the flow between the system will influence the different components. Now, don't get scared by this slide now, but to measure and account for all those things I've been mentioning, we will have numerous table groups, which were evident by the other framework I showed before. And as I mentioned, we don't need to go into detail, but it's important to know that each system of the framework will compile a variety of different information through these numeral table groups. And each system will produce different indicators that will be able to underpin different processes. So if you are still thinking on why do we need ocean accounts? Why do we need that? Some of the key outcomes and benefits that I would identify of its implementation are: providing the information infrastructure for various ocean governance and management approaches and frameworks, supply integrated reporting, enable the monitoring of ocean assets or marine and coastal natural capital that supply ocean services relevant to the economy, measure the impacts of economic activities and inform the risk thereof, enable the assessment of the consequences of policy interventions in adaptive policy cycles, provide key information on benefits and costs to the ocean resources and the use thereof, allow the tracking of changes in ocean wealth and risk, which are important sustainability indicators, and it also facilitates the identification of beneficiaries and how resources and opportunities are shared, which is an important indicator for inclusivity. And those are just some of the many benefits of implementing ocean accounts. Now, I thought it would also be nice and curious to know about what we are doing in terms of upstreaming ocean accounting in the Western Indian Ocean region, because I thought I told you I'm part of the Africa Community of Practice for Ocean Accounting. So as a quick overview, we are currently developing 4 pilot projects, one funded by the South Africa National Research Foundation. This project is located at the Algoa Bay in Kebeha. It is represented in this map by the red sign in the eastern area of South Africa. And here, various work packages are focused on different components of the framework. And there is also a specific work package focused on the linkages between each component. So it's a very broad and comprehensive project with a very broad approach. We also have other 3 pilot projects that are supported by GOAP, the Global Ocean Accounts Partnership, through the Blue Planet Fund from the UK. One of these pilots is located in Table Bay here in Cape Town, and another one is in Bazaruto Archipelago in Mozambique, and the third is in the Kilifi area in Kenya. For these pilots, we decided to start by marine ecosystem accounts as the initial accounts to be implemented, and we'll expand to different components such as fishery accounts, and here we want to include not only industrial fishery, but also small-scale fisheries, ocean economy satellite accounts, and pressure accounts. And our plans are to expand the coverage of this project funded by GOAP, and soon we will be starting other pilots in the region, so stay tuned. I know it was a lot of information. Perhaps I spoke too fast because I get excited. I'm sorry for that. But I think it's nice to select some key messages, perhaps. And And the three I chose for today's presentation are that economic metrics alone, they fail to capture non-market benefits and to account for natural capital, pressures, and components relevant for sustainability and inclusivity. Ocean accounting records economic, environmental, and social aspects in monetary, physical, and qualitative ways. And the third is that the ocean accounting framework is a framework of systems, established and novel, and these discrete systems are integrated by the flows I mentioned. And this structure makes it possible to establish a particular set of accounts depending on your demand, on your questions, in a way that you don't need to establish or to compile the whole system at once. The important thing is that by following the framework, with time, new components can be aggregated and expanded, and new systems can be included. So that's the key messages I hope you will bring home today. And yes, I hope you enjoyed the presentation, that you felt curious and positive about ocean accounts. I will be super happy to take any questions you have, and I would love to hear how useful, how relevant, how feasible you think such an approach is. And yeah, thank you very much for listening. Thank you for the event organizers for inviting me. It's a pleasure. And I am also thankful to Professor Ken Findlay and to the GoApp team. Thank you very much.